Hey out there in YouTube land, it's Kuda Slayer once again. I had tried doing a video recently about making some quick, cheap terrain for your game tables, and when after I did the video, it only dawned on me until about a week later that somehow I didn't have any audio tracks on said video, and so this is kind of me, I guess, pantomiming in front of the camera for about a half hour or so. So I'm trying to redo the video once again, try to remember at least most of what I've said. So, here's trying. Anyway, like I said, the previous video, what I tried to do was to come up with ways that people can come up with their own, terrain. They can do it quickly, on the cheap. My personal philosophy on gaming is that, you go expensive on figures, go cheap on terrain. But just because you go cheap doesn't mean it has to look lousy or there are effective ways of doing things. One of the recent projects I started on recently is the these large structures, whatever I call them. I kind of look at them and think of them as ribs of a decaying ship. Some people have called them sewer lines. I can think of them as different types of factory constructs. The main thing about something like this on your terrain table is that you want something that's going to be big, that's going to block line of sight, provide a lot of cover, but at the same time you want to have some kind of look where it looks futuristic, but you can still sort of tell what it is, or even sometimes I kind of think it's clever when you can do something where you look at it and you can sort of tell what it was made from, but you appreciate what's been trying to be turned into. And anyway, this is one of several I've done already for some of the local shops. I still got some more painting to do on it, but this is kind of give the general gist of what the final thing will look like. And this is kind of about, I want to say maybe like the second generation of the production run I tried doing with the last couple of weeks. And let's see, I don't have one lying around. Like the first ones I didn't do any kind of bolts on here. It was on later when I was looking at it that I kind of noticed that I needed something, surface or features for the paint wash to drip off of, or add a little bit, break up the flatness. And so all the original first generation ones I made were flat. Kind of need to do some stuff on the sides here too, but anyway, the general direction I wanted to go was to try to give some inspiration of what you can look for and how you can work with. As I've said I think I've said in previous videos, I work in a mechanic shop where I do a lot of part manufacture, and one of the things we make are general flange seals. This is actually would be a 6-inch 150-pound full face. Full face because it has bolts, 6 inches because it's about roughly 6 inches in the middle here. It's actually about close to 6 1/4 or something like that. But anyway, it's general simple shape. I can make a lot of these. I can cut and get a lot of stamp outs from other parts I make. And so generally I have when on the job I have a lot of leftover parts lying around, whatnot. But what I like about these is that this is it's fairly uniform shape. It's big. It has all these nice little holes in them. And what I can do is I can cut them. Cut them at different degrees. And actually, this is from a different size, but this. I can come up with all kinds of nice little shapes. Let's see, grab one of the others. This is kind of one of the more recent ones I did, where I tried changing things up instead of being more uniform. Now they're kind of look like they're either falling over or been beat up real good. A lot more bolt holes, a little better weight on them, and if you look at it, you can sort of tell what it's made from by your hand. When you start getting paint on them, like on this guy, this is one of the base coats I've been using. When you paint it, you blend away a lot of what it was made from, and it looks more kind of a uniform piece. It's not like something you look at and say, oh, it's just stuff bunched together. But when you start getting the colors all united, it starts looking more like something more unique. But anyway, what I kind of want to do was kind of walk through how I do these things. First off, I will stamp out a bunch of these and then start deciding how I want to cut them, get a decent level cut, kind of get this to kind of bend back a little. What I love about these is that in some ways, if you got several of them on a table and get them ranged just right, it looks like an open rib cage of like a large metal man or some other living thing, and it's all jagged. Like I said, you just look at it. I mean, you can tell it's part of something much larger. It's been distorted, and you don't know which way it's gone. For orcs, this would be a good piece of terrain to have for them, because they'll probably just take like a large piece and either slowly disassemble it or build up on it or whatever crazy thoughts get in their head. But on a tabletop, you want something pretty decently big, especially if when you got titans or large vehicles involved. Breaks good up line of sight, but also it adds atmosphere. Let's see. First, what I would do is, play around with these and decide what angles I want. Do I want to kind of bend back, forward? And just have to take a bunch of these and I play around with them. Let's see. And one of the little things is on these bolts here. Bolts are great, especially with the general aesthetic for 40K. Breaks up the flat surfaces, adds a little something for paint to drip off of, give you a little more kind of texture or visualizations. A quick way to make bolts like this is a leather punching tool like this. You can get these at almost any hobby store. I get most of my stuff at Hobby Lobby, but you got various different size heads you can swap these around for. And if you're easily bored or have a lot of time, like watch TV, you can get like just a thin piece of material like this and just punch out a whole bunch of these while watching TV or whatever. Another thing to look for in paper crafts are just a general hole punch. They're very different sizes and shapes you can get. Let's see. Grab this one over here. And also, whenever you have any kind of multiple pieces, like leftovers and such, you can play around with those, like making little patches like on here, or even use the hole punch to punch out more detail on larger pieces. I kind of like how this came out, cutting a nice little large hole down here and then doing some patches up here, kind of fairly more orcish. Yeah, noisy neighbors. Got a nice little large hole here. Give kind of give a little bit more variations to everything, so that they all don't look the same. That's a big problem when you do large batches of anything. You it's kind of real hard not to make everything look the same. So anyway, those are waiting to be painted. Let's see, ooh, crap. When you're doing large projects like this, glue is always a big problem. But I'll show you what I do. What I do is I buy super glue or crazy glue, whatever you want to call it, in these large, nice 8-ounce bottles. And whenever speak, that'd be great. What I do is I'll take large bottles like this and kind of distribute them into smaller bottles like this. These are small applicator bottles, nice little needle tip. Actually, it's kind of interesting. I've not had one of these clog on me, which I originally thought would happen, but as long as you keep them nice, standing up flat, I find the tips don't get clogged up. If some of these you'll come with like a little rubber cap you can put on the tip. I've gone through quite a few of those, so that seems about the only weak spot. But just use one of these at a time. Keep filling it up, and you can use something like this and last you a long time on like a big project, especially when you're working on like your figures and such. But you can get large bottles like this at most hobby stores, Amazon's a good supply. Let's see. Oh yeah. Another good thing to have are these are called acid brushes. These are good for when you're applying chemicals like acid or acetones or anything that's kind of fairly active and will react to regular paintbrushes. And so these are kind of will stand up for kind of a while, and you can throw them away with no problem. It's always good to have a bunch of these around when you're doing any kind of glue projects. Let's see, I'll be there. Let's see. Ready for painting it? Yeah, let's jump onto paint. What I've been doing when I've been painting these, I often try to look around for any quick, ways I can do things quickly and often in large batches. This was originally going to be my first example, but I kind of jumped ahead on the others. But imagine this as being a base model. Put a nice little coat of sand on the bottom. I usually start out with like a good layer of like PVA or General Elmer's glue. You can even water that down if you want doing like a coat of sand like this. Mainly for ground levels like this, you want to just have something that would give you a nice little texture to paint over. Also, you can for later on. This would be something for later on, but when you do something like a large surface like this, besides doing patches, you might want to take a little bit of glue and kind of just do a nice little layer to give something, do some texture work on that. But anyway, this is good. This is the kind of what the finished model looks like when I'm, done dorking with it and putting everything together. And what I'll do is I'll use for a base coat, I would use Rust-Oleum's marking paint. Nice thing about this is like about $6 a can. I can paint about roughly 9 of these, all with one can, and fairly quickly. Especially great because these are designed to spray when they're pointing down. Another great thing about this, these are water-based, so they will react a little better with the later acrylics that you use. Especially, kind of one thing I like to do sometimes is after paint something like this, I will try and be a little bit abrasive when I apply later coats of paint on there, or even doing the washes. kind of make things look more worn. You know, kind of show off some more of the undersurfaces. Just kind of add a little bit more to the age effect. But they offer several colors. They got red, green. There's a pink you might want to consider. Mainly if you can use a lot of like washes later down the road. But there's a yellow. Again, this is good because it's water-based. It's not going to be enamel that will repel any other water-based paint you may put on it. And you can do a little bit more things with water just for simple effects. Now, the later ones I have down here, I did with the various shades of washing. And of course, if you've been playing 40K long enough, you understand that what a wash is. Generally, it's a rather thin, ink-like level of paint. For projects like this, I will often take find a cheap brand of paint like Apple Barrel here. You can get this at almost any general hobby or even a lot more general stores. These are about 50 cents a bottle like this size, or $2.50 for a little something more closer to this size. I use this particular brand for ground colors because it's fairly thick. It's almost like jelly, and you need to water it down real good and do at least 1 or 2 good coats of any kind of ground work that you're trying to do. But with with the washes, you can just take a little bit of this and maybe 1 part of whatever you're trying to do with 4 or 5, maybe take it up even larger to thin it out of water. And if you really want to go the next step, is you can use this with isopropyl alcohol for other different types of surfaces, or if you want it to kind of the color or pigment to kind of settle differently in crevices and such. That's one way of doing it. This is kind of a random color I picked up. It's a Flamingo Coral, if you can't read that. And I use it for the first wash, which is mainly to kind of really dull down and change the base coat. Kind of a final note on the base coat, just so I could avoid having a tangent later. When you're picking a base coat for like buildings and such, especially when you're doing something quite a few, large batches, pick a color that's going to be more institutional. Like if you remember going to school, there's often like a seafoam green, there's a sea gray. I remember there's some blues I've seen in other buildings, but you just want something that's going to maybe bright initially, but you just dull it down later. But it's kind of adds a little bit more variety. But anyway, the first coat of wash I did. I think with this actually I used ripe tomato from the Apple Barrel line, but this is pretty close to it. And you just kind of thin it out, and it's going to do a nice little good wash all over it. You want to cover as much of it as possible. In some cases, you might want to leave a little bit left over so that the original color shows through. Kind of gives kind of more of a timeline when something's been rusting away for many years. Just with the initial coat, you may actually want to make it a little thicker than the other washes. Maybe even go 2 or even 3 parts to 1 part paint. 2-3 parts water to 1 part paint. Kind of give a nice, good, thick, slightly thicker covering, and just kind of give you a little bit of surface area. And the next coat after that's dried, I go with Apple Barrel's Harvest Orange, a little slightly darker orange instead of a red. And this starts adding a little bit more of a rust effect to it. Kind of takes the original red that you applied and just kind of changes it to a different shade, looks a little bit more rust-like, and you can almost call it quits at this layer. But if you want to go take a little further, I would recommend going to this level, and with a little much more thinner paint. I've used pumpkin orange and jack-o'-lantern off and on between these for these kinds of wash coats. You want to go a little thinner, and it gets a nice little good rust effect. You can color quits there, or kind of interesting, I used a yellow, this King's Yellow, to dull it out a little bit more. But anyway, that's kind of a quick way to do your own terrain on the cheap. I probably spent maybe barely $12 on what I had here. And anyway, hope it's better than the last video now that it has sound, and I'll catch you later.